The fire rose like a living beast, its flames clawing at the sky, its roar drowning the voices of the crowd. Men, women, children, all pressed forward, their eyes wide with hatred and fear, waiting for the spectacle. In the center of it all stood Ibrahim, bound with ropes that cut into his skin, his face calm in the glow of fire that promised to consume him. To the people, he was a rebel against their gods. To him, this was not an end, but a beginning. But before the fire, before the fury of the crowd, there was a boy who looked at the world and asked questions no one else dared to ask. He grew up in a society where idols were everywhere, giant statues of stone and wood, polished with oil, decorated with jewels, treated as though they had power over rain, crops, and destiny. People bowed to them, prayed to them, begged them for mercy. And among those bowing was his own father, Azar, who carved and sold idols with his own hands. For the people it was normal. For Ibrahim, even as a child, it was unbearable. One night he looked at the sky. Above him a star glimmered, brighter than the rest. "This must be my Lord," he whispered. But then the star faded into the night. "No," he said quietly, "I do not love things that set." The next day he saw the moon, vast and glowing, and for a moment thought, "This is greater." But as the night passed, the moon also disappeared. And when the sun rose, burning with strength, he watched in silence. Surely this was more powerful than all. But the sun too sank below the horizon. Ibrahim stood alone in the twilight and whispered, "I cannot worship what disappears. My Lord must be the one who made them all." Day after day, his questions grew louder in his heart. Why bow to stones that cannot hear? Why pray to wood that cannot answer? Why trust in idols carved by human hands? When those hands trembled with hunger and fear, he went to his father. "Father," he said softly, "why do you worship that which does not hear, see, or help you in any way? These idols bring no benefit. They cannot even defend themselves." Azar looked at his son with anger. "Do you reject the gods of your people, Ibrahim? Do you think you are wiser than generations before you?" The boy did not raise his voice. He only said, "I have found guidance. I cannot bow to lies." His father turned away, unwilling to listen. But the boy did not stop. In the marketplace he spoke to others. Some laughed at him. Some grew angry. "Who are you," they shouted, "to mock our gods? Who are you to challenge our fathers and their fathers before them?" Ibrahim's answer was simple. "I do not mock. I only ask, why worship what cannot answer?" The people ignored him. Yet something about his calm persistence disturbed them. He was young, but his voice carried a strength that did not break, a certainty that unsettled even the elders. In the silence of the night, some of them wondered if he was right. But in the daylight, they returned to their idols, unwilling to abandon tradition. Still, Ibrahim watched and waited. His heart was firm. He was not searching anymore. He had found his Lord, the one God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Now his task was to show his people what he knew. The boy grew into a man, and with him grew the courage to stand against a nation. He would not argue forever. He would act. And one day, when the chance came, he did. The festival had called the people out of the city. The streets were empty, the temple quiet. Inside stood the idols, tall and silent, the so-called gods of stone. Ibrahim entered with steady steps, carrying an axe. He looked at the faces of the statues, their blank eyes staring into nothingness. Then, with a calm hand, he raised the axe and brought it down. One after another, the idols crashed to the ground, shattering into pieces, powerless even in their own defense. Only the largest was left, towering in the center. Ibrahim hung the axe on its shoulder and walked away. When the people returned, they were furious. Their gods were broken, their pride humiliated. "Who has done this?" they cried. Whispers spread through the crowd. It was Ibrahim. They dragged him before the leaders, their voices sharp with anger. "Did you do this to our gods?" Ibrahim's voice was calm. "Ask the biggest of them. He has the axe." The crowd fell silent. Some laughed nervously, but the truth in his words stung. The leaders clenched their fists, knowing what he meant. The idols could not speak. They could not defend themselves. They were nothing. And so their anger grew into rage. If he mocked their gods, they would destroy him in fire. The fire they built was unlike any before it. Wood was gathered for days. The flames, when lit, reached so high that even the strongest men could not go near. The heat burned the skin of those who stood at a distance. They would not let Ibrahim walk to it. They would hurl him from afar, like prey thrown to a beast. As the fire roared, Ibrahim stood in ropes, his face calm, his eyes lifted to the sky. He did not fear the crowd nor the flames. His trust was elsewhere. His words were simple. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me, and the best of protectors. The moment of trial had come, and it was in this moment that history turned. Forever. The fire still roared, but Ibrahim's story did not begin in flames. It began in the silence of conviction. He was a man who had found truth, and with truth comes the courage to speak, even when no one listens. When his people gathered in the temple, their voices filled the air with praise for lifeless idols. They brought offerings, bowed their heads, and begged for rain, wealth, and children. Ibrahim watched quietly until the moment came when he could no longer remain silent. He stood among them and said, "What are these images to which you are devoted?" The question struck them like a stone tossed into calm water. Some turned in confusion, others in irritation. "They are the gods of our fathers," they replied. "We found our ancestors worshipping them, and so we do the same." Ibrahim's voice did not rise. It remained calm, steady. "Then your fathers were in clear error. These statues cannot help you. They cannot harm you. They cannot even move. Do you not think?" The murmurs grew louder. A man at the front spat on the ground. "How dare you insult our fathers? Who are you, a mere youth, to challenge traditions older than the mountains? Do you think you are wiser than generations before you?" Ibrahim did not flinch. "I do not insult," he said. "I only call you to reason. Do not worship what cannot benefit you. Worship the one who created you, who gives you life, who sends rain from the sky and makes the earth grow." Some laughed. "You speak nonsense." Others shook their heads. "You bring shame." Yet a few looked at him with quiet unease, for deep in their hearts they knew the idols had never answered their prayers. His father Azar stepped forward, his face hard. "Ibrahim," he said sharply, "do you turn away from my gods? If you do not stop, I will drive you out. Do you want to be cursed, rejected by your own people?" Ibrahim's reply was soft, yet firm. "O my father, do not worship that which cannot hear or see. Do not worship that which cannot save you. I fear for you the punishment of the most merciful." But his father's eyes burned with anger. "Do you reject my gods, Ibrahim? Enough. If you will not follow our ways, then leave us." The people cheered Azar's words, their voices rising as one. Ibrahim was cast out, dismissed as a fool. Yet even as they rejected him, his heart did not waver. He knew the truth, and truth does not bend under the weight of mockery. Still, the seed of doubt was planted in the minds of some. They had seen the emptiness in their rituals, but fear bound them to tradition. To break away would mean exile, shame, or worse. So they clung to the idols, even as the words of Ibrahim echoed in their ears. Days passed. Ibrahim walked among them, no longer invited to their gatherings, no longer welcome at their feasts. Children whispered behind him, elders spat at his feet, merchants refused him trade. Yet he did not respond with anger. He did not curse them. He simply continued his mission, to call them to the one God. One evening, as the sun set and shadows stretched across the earth, Ibrahim looked again at the idols in the great hall of worship. Their faces were blank, their bodies covered in dust. Candles flickered at their feet, casting long, lifeless shadows. He thought of his people, men and women bowing to stone while the true Creator remained forgotten. His heart grew heavy. He prayed silently, asking Allah for guidance, for patience, for strength. And guidance came, not in words whispered from the sky, but in conviction deep in his chest. He knew he could not argue forever. He needed to show them. He needed to strike at the very heart of their falsehood. That was when the plan formed. He would wait. He would act not with rage, but with clarity. And when the time was right, the truth would reveal itself, not through debate, but through the silence of shattered idols. The opportunity came soon after. A festival was announced, a day when the entire city would leave for the fields to celebrate, dance, and offer sacrifices. The temple would be empty. The idols would stand alone. The people prepared with excitement. Food was gathered, drums were beaten, garlands hung in the streets. Ibrahim pretended to be sick. When the crowds left, the city fell silent. He walked slowly through the deserted streets, the echo of his steps bouncing off stone walls. When he reached the temple, the doors creaked as he pushed them open. The air inside was heavy with the scent of old oil and incense. The idols stood in their places, tall and silent, guardians of nothing. Ibrahim stepped forward, carrying an axe in his hand. His heart was steady. He looked at the lifeless faces one last time and whispered, "You claim divinity, but you cannot even protect yourselves." Then, with a firm swing, he struck. The crash echoed through the hall. One by one, the idols fell. Their heads rolled across the floor. Their limbs cracked and splintered. Dust rose into the air as centuries of false worship shattered in moments. Only the largest idol remained, towering in silence. Ibrahim approached it, lifted the axe, and hung it on its shoulder. He turned and walked away. The hall was filled with silence, but it was a silence that spoke louder than words. When the people returned, they would see. They would be forced to ask questions they had long avoided. And in their rage, they would reveal the truth of their own gods. But for now, Ibrahim walked calmly back into the empty streets, the echoes of shattered stone behind him. The test was only beginning. The sun was high when the people returned from the festival. Their laughter filled the streets, their hands full of food and gifts, their voices lifted in cheer. But as they neared the temple, their joy fell silent. The great doors stood open. Inside, the idols lay broken, their faces cracked, their limbs scattered across the stone floor. The proud guardians of their faith had been reduced to rubble. A wave of shock swept over the crowd. Men dropped their baskets. Women covered their mouths. Children clung to their mothers' skirts, staring with wide eyes. Then the silence broke into cries of rage. "Who has done this?" they shouted. "Who dared to insult our gods?" The leaders of the city rushed forward, their faces pale with fury. They pushed through the crowd, staring at the shattered remains. And then came the whispers. It was Ibrahim. They remembered his words, his calm defiance, his questions that had unsettled them. Of course it was him. Who else would dare such a thing? The guards were sent to bring him. He did not hide. He did not run. When they found him, he was sitting quietly, his face calm, his hands folded. He rose without struggle when they seized him and walked with steady steps back to the temple. The crowd pressed in around him, voices sharp and angry. "Was it you?" they demanded. "Did you destroy our gods?" Ibrahim's eyes swept the hall, pausing at the great idol that still stood. The axe hung heavy across its shoulder. He turned back to the people and said, "The largest of them did it. Ask him if he can speak." The crowd froze. The words cut deeper than any blade. For a moment no one spoke. Some shifted uneasily, realizing the truth in his challenge. The idols could not speak. They could not defend themselves. They could not do anything at all. But pride is louder than truth. A man at the front spat on the ground. "You mock us!" Another shouted. "You mock our gods!" The leaders raised their arms to silence the crowd, their voices rising above the chaos. "You know these idols cannot speak," one of them growled. "Do not play games with us, Ibrahim. Admit what you have done." Ibrahim's voice was steady. "I did what you should have done long ago. Why worship what cannot hear, cannot see, cannot protect you? Why bow to stones when the one who created you calls you to worship him alone?" The people shifted restlessly. Some lowered their eyes. Others clenched their fists. The truth was clear, but admitting it would mean abandoning generations of tradition. It would mean tearing down the foundation of their pride. One elder, his beard long and white, shook his head. "You are clever, Ibrahim, but we will not abandon the gods of our fathers. You shame us before our people, and for this you must be punished." The crowd roared in agreement. The sound was like thunder rolling through the temple. Anger overcame reason. Their fear of losing power outweighed their hesitation. "Burn him!" someone shouted. "Burn him alive!" The cry spread like fire itself. "Yes, burn him! Let the flames avenge our gods!" The leaders seized the idea. A fire would not only punish Ibrahim, it would silence his message. It would prove in the eyes of the people that their gods were still powerful. They ordered wood to be gathered. Not a small fire, but the greatest the city had ever seen. For days, men cut trees and carried logs. Women brought oil and cloth to feed the flames. The pile grew higher than the walls of houses, a mountain of wood waiting to be lit. The people watched with excitement and fear. They whispered of the heat, of the light that would fill the sky. They said no man could survive it. They said even approaching the flames would scorch the strongest skin. And all the while Ibrahim stood calm. His hands were bound, his face serene. He did not argue, did not plead, did not fight. His heart rested in the certainty of Allah's protection. At night, as the firewood towered higher, some of the ordinary people began to doubt. They remembered the broken idols, the silence in the temple, the truth that had shone in Ibrahim's words. But they feared the wrath of the leaders. They feared exile, shame, or death. So, they remained silent, watching as the fire grew. When the mountain of wood was complete, the leaders gave the command. Torches were brought forward, flames flickering in the night. One by one, the torches touched the dry wood, and the fire roared to life. The heat was unbearable. People stepped back, shielding their faces. The flames climbed higher and higher until it seemed they touched the very sky. Sparks rained down like stars, and the air shook with the crackle of burning timber. No man could walk near it. No hand could throw him in. So they built a great catapult, a device to hurl Ibrahim from afar into the heart of the fire. The people gathered, their voices rising in chants. The leaders stood tall, pride in their eyes. To them, this was justice. To them, this was victory. But Ibrahim's calm face told another story. Bound in ropes, he looked to the sky and whispered words that would live forever. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Allah is sufficient for me and the best of protectors. The fire roared. The catapult was prepared. The crowd held its breath. The moment of truth had come. The fire consumed the sky. Its glow turned night into day, and its heat reached far beyond the square where it raged. The people of the city stood at a distance, their faces lit by the flames, their hearts trembling between awe and fear. Never had they seen such a blaze. It was as if the sun itself had descended to earth. In the center of the gathering stood Ibrahim, bound in ropes, waiting. He did not resist. His calmness unsettled even those who shouted for his death. He did not curse them. He did not plead for mercy. He simply stood, his gaze lifted toward the heavens, his lips moving in quiet remembrance. The leaders of the people, proud and furious, prepared the catapult. They would not let anyone approach the fire. It was too fierce. Even birds flying above fell from the sky, their wings scorched by the heat. So the leaders commanded that Ibrahim be hurled from a distance, flung into the blaze as an offering to the gods he had defied. Men gathered around the massive wooden device. With straining arms, they pulled back the ropes, locking the arm into place. The crowd watched in tense silence. The heat of the fire pressed against their skin, forcing them to shield their faces, but still they did not turn away. They wanted to see the man who mocked their idols, consumed by flames. And in the heart of the crowd, there were whispers. Some men, their voices low, admitted what they dared not say aloud. He speaks the truth. The idols cannot save him, nor anyone else. But fear silenced them. To defend Ibrahim was to invite the same fate. So they said nothing, their eyes lowered as the leaders prepared his destruction. As Ibrahim was placed in the sling of the catapult, the ropes dug deeper into his skin. Yet his face did not waver. In his heart, there was only certainty. Allah was with him. No fire could harm him without Allah's permission. No crowd could end what Allah had decreed. The leaders raised their hands. "Now," they cried, "let the gods avenge themselves." The catapult arm released. With a sudden force, Ibrahim was flung high into the air, his body carried toward the roaring blaze. The crowd gasped, their voices rising in a single shout that echoed against the walls of the city. Children clung to their mothers. Men leaned forward to watch. The flames surged higher, hungry for the body that fell toward them. And then it happened. In that moment the heavens spoke. Allah, Lord of the worlds, commanded, "O fire, be coolness and safety for Ibrahim." The flames obeyed. What had roared with fury now bent to the will of the one who created it. The heat that had driven men back became gentle. The fire that had devoured wood and flesh alike became harmless, soft as a garden breeze. The ropes that bound Ibrahim burned away, but not his skin, not his clothes, not a single hair on his head. He landed within the heart of the fire, yet he sat unharmed, surrounded by flames that no longer burned. The inferno became a place of peace, a sanctuary where Ibrahim rested in the protection of his Lord. The crowd froze. Their mouths hung open, their voices caught in their throats. They had expected screams, the smell of burning flesh, the triumph of their idols. Instead, they saw a man sitting calmly in the fire, untouched, unbroken, serene. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Men stepped backward in fear. Some fell to their knees, trembling, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. The leaders exchanged desperate glances, their pride cracking under the weight of the miracle. "What is this?" one of them muttered, his voice shaking. "Why does he not burn?" Another snarled, though his eyes betrayed terror. "It is sorcery. He has tricked you all." But his words rang hollow. The people knew what they saw. This was no trick. This was no illusion. It was a miracle, a sign from the heavens that Ibrahim spoke the truth. For long moments the fire blazed around him, yet Ibrahim remained at peace, whispering praises to Allah. He was not consumed. He was not harmed. He was saved, for the one who commands the fire had declared it harmless. The crowd began to scatter, some fleeing in fear, others whispering in awe. "He is a prophet," they said. "He is protected by the Lord of the heavens and the earth." But the leaders stood firm, their faces twisted with rage and humiliation. They could not allow the people to believe. If they admitted what their eyes had seen, their power would crumble. So they shouted above the murmurs. "Do not be deceived," they cried. "This man has bewitched you. Hold to your gods. Do not abandon the faith of your fathers." Yet even as they shouted, their voices trembled. They could not hide the truth from themselves. In their hearts, they knew the fire had obeyed Ibrahim's Lord, not theirs. The night wore on, and the fire slowly died down. The wood collapsed into glowing embers, the smoke rising into the sky. When at last the flames were gone, Ibrahim stood unharmed, his clothes unscorched, his face calm as ever. He stepped out from the ashes as if he had walked through a garden at dawn. The people stared, silent and shaken. None could deny what they had seen. Ibrahim had faced the greatest fire they could build, and it had become cool and safe. His message was no longer words alone. It was truth, made visible, undeniable, unshakable. The embers glowed faintly where the fire had once roared like a beast. Smoke curled into the night sky, carrying with it the last whispers of a trial that had shaken an entire city. And from the ashes, Ibrahim walked, calm, unburned, untouched. The crowd fell silent. Thousands of eyes followed him as he stepped forward, his clothes as whole as when he had been bound, his face serene. No mark of flame, no scar of fire, only peace. Some gasped aloud. Others stumbled backward, their legs trembling. Mothers clutched their children close, while the elders stood frozen, their mouths half open, in disbelief. For all their chanting, for all their pride, for all their hatred, what they had witnessed was undeniable. The fire had not consumed him. It had obeyed him. Or rather, it had obeyed the one who protected him. Ibrahim raised his hands and spoke, his voice calm but strong enough to carry across the square. "You see now, the fire cannot harm me, for Allah commands it. Your idols did not save themselves, nor did they save you. They are nothing. Worship the one who created the heavens and the earth. Worship Allah alone." His words struck the hearts of many like thunder. For some, it was a call they had been waiting to hear. They had always known, deep inside, that the idols were powerless. Now the proof stood before them, living, breathing, walking unharmed from the very fire meant to destroy him. But pride is heavier than truth. The leaders of the people, red with humiliation, could not bear it. Their faces twisted with anger as they shouted over him, "Do not listen. He is a liar, a magician. Do not be deceived by his tricks." But even they knew there was no trick. No man could order flames to cool. No sorcery could turn fire into safety. It was a miracle, clear and undeniable. And the people saw it. The whispers began again. "He is chosen by God. This man speaks the truth. The idols are nothing." The leaders clenched their fists, their power slipping through their hands like sand. They had built their authority on lies, on fear, on the worship of stone. And now a single man had torn it apart with the strength of his faith. Yet Ibrahim did not argue with them further. He did not shout to overpower their cries. He simply walked forward, his calm presence stronger than their fury. He had done what Allah willed. The miracle was the proof. His task was not to force hearts, but to deliver the truth. And so he walked through the crowd. Some stepped aside with respect, bowing their heads. Others turned away in shame. A few, their faces pale, avoided his eyes, knowing they could not deny what they had seen. He passed by the leaders, who glared at him with hatred. They wanted to kill him, but they could not. They had thrown him into the fire, the greatest punishment they could imagine, and Allah had protected him. What more could they do? Their power had reached its limit. His faith had not. That night, the city was restless. In their homes, families whispered about what they had seen. Some trembled with fear of change, others with hope. Children asked their parents, "Why didn't the fire burn him?" And for once the parents had no answer. In the quiet streets, men who had laughed at Ibrahim now sat in silence, staring at their broken idols. Women who had bowed to stone found themselves wondering if they had bowed to nothing. The miracle had planted seeds that would not easily die. And Ibrahim, he did not sleep with pride. He did not boast of his survival. Instead, he prayed, thanking Allah for his mercy, his protection, his command that turned fire into peace. His heart was steady. He knew his journey was not finished. The fire was not the end. It was a sign, one among many. His mission was greater, to guide, to remind, to call people back to the truth. The next morning, when the sun rose over the city, Ibrahim was already walking through the marketplace. People stared at him as he passed, whispering among themselves. He carried no weapon, no torch, no axe, only the calm certainty of faith. "Leave your idols," he said gently. "Turn to the one who created you. Do not bow to stones that cannot speak, that cannot protect themselves, that cannot even rise from the ground without your hands to lift them. Bow to Allah alone." Some turned away, unwilling to listen. Others followed him with curious eyes. A few nodded, their hearts moved, but their voices still silent. Change was slow, but truth does not vanish once it has been seen. The leaders watched with clenched jaws. They whispered among themselves, plotting, but their power was shaken. For the fire had revealed what words alone could not. Ibrahim had been tested, and he had emerged unharmed. His survival was not just for himself. It was for all who witnessed it, for all who would hear of it, for all generations to come. The story of the fire spread beyond the city. Travelers carried it to distant lands. the tale of a man who defied idols, who was cast into flames, and who walked out untouched. It became a story of faith, of courage, of truth. And as it spread, hearts stirred. For those who longed for something greater than stone, it was a beacon. For those who clung to falsehood, it was a threat. But for Ibrahim, it was only the beginning. His path stretched far ahead, filled with trials and triumphs. He would be tested again and again. Yet his trust in Allah would never waver. The fire had been cool, and Ibrahim had been safe. But his mission was not over. The city had never been so quiet. The fire was gone, but its memory lingered in every heart. The people spoke in hushed voices, afraid of their own thoughts, unsettled by what they had seen. Ibrahim had not been consumed. He had walked from the flames as if from a garden. The truth had been shown, and truth does not vanish, even when men try to bury it. The leaders gathered in secret, their faces shadowed by shame and anger. They whispered urgently, their voices bitter. We cannot allow this to spread. If the people follow him, our power will be broken. Another answered, But what can we do? We hurled him into fire, and even that did not harm him. What more is left? They plotted and schemed, but their words rang hollow, for they had no answer. The fire had been their final weapon, their last show of force, and it had failed. Meanwhile, Ibrahim walked among the people, his steps steady, his words calm. He did not shout or threaten. He did not curse his enemies. Instead, he reminded his people again and again, Worship Allah, the one who created you. Do not bow to what cannot hear or see. Your idols are nothing. Your Lord is everything. Some hearts turned to him in secret. A merchant's wife whispered the testimony of faith under her breath. A young man broke his family's idol in the night and hid it away. A shepherd prayed alone in the fields, raising his hands not to stone, but to the sky. They were few, but they were seeds, and seeds grow. But most of the people clung to tradition. Fear held them fast. Fear of exile, fear of shame, fear of change. They had seen the miracle, but still they turned away, as if closing their eyes could make it untrue. Ibrahim did not despair. His mission was never to force belief, but to deliver the truth. The rest was in the hands of Allah. And so he continued his journey, leaving behind those who had rejected him, carrying the message wherever he went. In the years to come, his trials would not end. He would be tested with migration, with hunger, with loneliness. He would be tested with the command to sacrifice his beloved son, a trial greater than fire itself. Yet through every test his heart remained firm, his trust unshaken. And for this Allah made him an example for all people, a leader for nations, a man whose name would be remembered as the Father of Faith. His story became more than history. It became a guide, a lesson written in fire and patience. Generations repeated his words, told his trials, passed down his faith. His name lived on not as a man destroyed by fire, but as a man who proved that fire itself bows to the will of Allah. And so it is today. The story of Ibrahim is not only about the past, it is about us. It is about faith that does not bend when the world demands silence. It is about truth that does not vanish, even when wrapped in flames. It is about trusting Allah when every rope is tight, when every crowd is against you, when every fire is waiting to consume you. For the believer, his story is not just remembered. It is lived. Every time we face hardship and remain patient, every time we choose faith over fear, every time we say, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil, Allah is sufficient for us, and the best of protectors. The fire became cool, the flames became peace, and Ibrahim walked free. That is the legacy of a prophet. That is the lesson of a man who stood against the world with nothing but faith, and was victorious, because Allah was with him. The fire could not burn him, the people could not silence him. His faith was stronger than fear, his trust greater than fire. And so, centuries later, his story still burns, not with flames of destruction, but with light, with guidance, with hope. Remember Ibrahim, A.S.? Remember the fire that became cool? And remember that the one who saved him is the same Lord who watches over you today.